Invisible Shackles: The Reality of Mental Health Discrimination and Abuse. An open letter to unnamed facility or UN. This is a letter documenting issues faced by residents. Attempts to gain advocacy were made, referrals to legal, and were utilized and also dismissed by legal aid. There seems to be an overall dismissal if you have any type of diagnosis, and often it is used against you after you overcome and treat it. I am writing to formally report a series of grievous violations and discriminatory practices at residents, unnamed, which directly infringe upon my civil rights as a resident with a mental health diagnosis. These issues not only demonstrate systemic neglect, but also constitute clear violations of both state and federal regulations pertaining to housing and mental health care. Since my move into this facility on September 29, 2023, I have faced numerous obstacles that reveal a pattern of discriminatory practices against individuals with mental health conditions. Issues range from violation of court orders, no written lease or policies, provided signing, without pay, present financial exploitation, eviction threats, withholding personal mail and checks, punishment for non-compliance, denial of off-site housing, unreasonable compliance demands, children not allowed in residence, inadequate services, barriers to court-proven residential stability, invasive practices regarding health information, interference in medical treatment, interference with parental rights, failure to provide documentation, gaslighting and psychological manipulation, neglect of basic rights and autonomy, discriminatory practices, potential civil rights violations. Specifically, violations of court orders. I have been unjustly barred from exercising my court-ordered visitation rights with my children, thereby violating family court mandates that dictate living arrangements conducive to the welfare of my children. Facility's current policy effectively undermines these orders, placing me in legal jeopardy. Failure to provide written lease agreements. I was compelled to backdate my lease to September 26, 2023, and did not receive the associated policies or rent breakdown until October 8, 2023, which is in direct violation of landlord-tenant laws requiring written agreements prior to lease commencement. Discriminatory practices in housing requirements. Facilities has leveraged my mental health diagnosis to restrict my rights. For example, the facility stipulates that my children are not permitted in my residence despite earlier assurances, citing unfounded interpretations of my mental health needs to justify their policies. This constitutes a form of discrimination based on my mental health status, including unjust assumptions about my parenting capabilities. Financial exploitation and coercion. I have repeatedly requested transparency regarding monthly fees and service charges, but these requests have been met with hostility. The threat of eviction has loomed over my attempts to address financial concerns, reflecting unethical practices that prioritize monetary gain over resident well-being. Improper handling of personal mail and checks. Facility has opened and withheld my personal mail, specifically checks and correspondence, from APS, subjecting me to financial hardship as a form of punishment for non-compliance with facility rules that were not adequately communicated to me. Interference with healthcare rights. The facility has engaged in practices that compromise my medical privacy, including discussing my treatment notes in common areas where confidentiality is not maintained. This directly violates the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, HIPAA. Threats of illegal eviction and to be thrown in the street. I have encountered intimidating threats from staff regarding eviction without proper legal procedure, infringing upon my rights as a tenant. Any attempt to raise concerns has led to increased threats rather than constructive dialogue. These actions are not merely isolated incidents. They represent a disturbing trend that systematically undermines the rights and dignity of those with mental health conditions. It is of utmost importance that your agency investigates these violations thoroughly. The disregard for regulations and civil rights within facility places vulnerable individuals at risk of significant harm. In light of these serious concerns, I respectfully request that your agency investigate these practices and ensure that appropriate corrective measures are implemented. Individuals living with mental health conditions deserve to be treated with dignity and respect, free from discrimination and abuse. Thank you for your attention to this pressing matter. I look forward to your prompt response and actions to address these significant violations. Sincerely, confidential. The issues. The reviews provided by employees of this facility highlighted several significant issues, including a lack of proper training, unsupportive management, favoritism, challenging work-life balance, and stressful work environment focused on financial goals over employee well-being. Employees expressed dissatisfaction with the lack of support, inconsistent communication, and a perception of unfair treatment. Additionally, concerns about limited career growth opportunities, overwhelming workloads, and inflexible policies and procedures were prevalent. While no explicit mentions of illegal activities were reported, the unethical behaviors highlighted, such as favoritism, lack of support, and a stressful work environment, signal potential organizational challenges that may require attention to foster a more positive and ethical workplace culture. Lack of training in mental health facilities and housing poses significant risks to patient and client safety and care quality, which can ultimately lead to criminal negligence and prosecution. Inadequately trained staff may struggle to identify and manage potentially hazardous situations, resulting in increased incidents of harm during crises that could have been avoided with proper intervention techniques. Their unfamiliarity with regulatory requirements can lead to non-compliance with vital safety protocols, putting clients, patients, and staff at risk. Poor communication skills hinder effective engagement with patients, which can exacerbate behavioral issues and increase the likelihood of conflicts. Moreover, insufficient training may result in violations of patients' rights and instances of abuse or neglect, further compounding the risk of legal ramifications for facilities and staff. Emergency protocols crucial for client and patient safety during crises may be inadequately understood or ignored, leading to tragic consequences. When care facilities and housing fail to uphold their duty of care due to a lack of training, instances of criminal negligence arise, making them vulnerable to prosecution. This not only damages the reputation of the facility or organization, but can also have devastating effects on the lives of vulnerable individuals who rely on these services for support and care. Therefore, investing in comprehensive training programs within mental health settings is essential to safeguarding both patient well-being and the legal standing of the facility. Mental health is an integral aspect of overall well-being, influencing how individuals think, feel, and act. It affects how we handle stress, relate to others, and make choices in our daily lives. Yet, despite its significance, mental health remains stigmatized and misunderstood in society. Discrimination against individuals with mental health conditions manifests in various forms, from subtle biases to overt acts of hostility and neglect, creating a landscape of suffering that often goes unseen. This article aims to illuminate the harsh realities faced by those with mental health diagnoses, an often overlooked and marginalized segment of the population. It seeks to raise awareness about the discrimination and abuse that individuals face, not only from external environments, but also from those charged with their care. By sharing personal experiences and systemic challenges faced within mental health facilities, such as those encountered at UN Transitional, a housing facility in Erie County, New York, this work underscores the urgent need for change. In a world where mental health conditions can often lead to labels that unjustly define individuals, we explore the broader implications of these experiences. Mental health is not merely a personal issue. It is a societal one that requires collective understanding and action. Through education, advocacy, and awareness, we can dismantle the invisible shackles that bind those struggling with mental health issues. Understanding mental health discrimination. Mental health discrimination refers to the unfair treatment of individuals based on their mental health status. This form of discrimination can take many shapes and can occur in various settings, including workplaces, educational institutions, and within healthcare systems. Individuals with mental health conditions often encounter stigma-negative stereotypes and attitudes that can lead to social exclusion and feelings of shame. The historical context of mental illness significantly informs contemporary perceptions, as those with diagnoses have long been labeled as other or less than. Throughout history, individuals with mental illnesses were frequently institutionalized in asylums, where they were often subjected to inhumane treatment. The deinstitutionalization movement of the late 20th century was meant to integrate individuals into society. However, it often left many without appropriate support structures, leading to marginalization. In modern contexts, mental health discrimination manifests through dismissive attitudes from healthcare providers, negative portrayals in the media, and workplace discrimination. For instance, a candidate with a mental health diagnosis may face barriers during hiring processes or be overlooked for promotions, despite qualifications. Understanding these dynamics is crucial for initiating change. Recognizing the extent and forms of mental health discrimination can help foster empathy and spark conversations aimed at dismantling stigma. As society gains awareness of mental health issues, it becomes increasingly essential to challenge misconceptions and advocate for a more inclusive, supportive environment for all. The dual struggles, abuses faced by those with mental illness. Individuals diagnosed with mental health conditions face various forms of abuse and discrimination that are often exacerbated by societal stigma. These abuses manifest not only in interpersonal relationships, but also within institutional settings. Physical and emotional abuse remain grave concerns, as individuals may be subjected to harsh treatment, neglect, and even violence. The overarching narrative often treats them as less deserving of compassion and care, reducing their humanity to mere diagnoses. Moreover, psychological manipulation in the form of gaslighting can have a profound impact on an individual's mental well-being. This tactic involves making someone doubt their reality, leading to confusion, increased anxiety, and feelings of helplessness. For instance, individuals may be told that their needs are unreasonable or that their reactions to poor treatment are exaggerated, further isolating them and making them feel invalidated. Economic exploitation is another critical aspect of abuse faced by mentally ill individuals. Many facilities, such as residential programs, impose exorbitant costs for services that are often substandard or unavailable. In cases like this facility, individuals may find themselves paying for unnecessary treatments or services that do not provide any real benefit, leaving them financially strained. This exploitation can lead to further isolation and desperation, creating vicious cycles that make it harder for these individuals to break free. The combination of these elements creates an environment that is hostile to those with mental health conditions. Such abuses not only hinder recovery, but can also lead to long-term psychological and social ramifications. It is vital that society recognizes and addresses these systemic issues to ensure that individuals with mental health diagnoses receive the respect, care, and support they need to lead fulfilling lives. The impact of labels. Labels can be both empowering and debilitating. In the case of mental health, being labeled as mentally ill can carry significant societal stigma that affects self-perception, social relationships, and professional opportunities. Those living with mental health diagnoses often experience discrimination in various aspects of life, simply due to the labels that are assigned to them. The stigma surrounding these labels can lead to devastating consequences, creating barriers to their successful reintegration into society. For example, a person diagnosed with bipolar disorder may find employment opportunities limited or subject to numerous hurdles due to misconceptions surrounding their capability to perform tasks effectively. Employers may fear that this individual will be unstable or unable to meet expectations despite evidence to the contrary. Consequently, many individuals attempt to hide their mental health conditions to navigate everyday life, further perpetuating feelings of shame and isolation. Additionally, the label of mental illness can impact familial and social relationships. Family members may struggle to understand the nuances of mental health, leading them to inadvertently stigmatize their loved ones. Friends may withdraw due to their discomfort or lack of understanding, isolating individuals further. This can create a cycle of loneliness that exacerbates existing mental health conditions. Individuals may internalize this stigma, becoming self-critical and fostering a negative self-image. The ramifications of labeling extend beyond the individual. When whole communities adopt stigmatizing attitudes toward mental illness, it hinders broader societal change. Changing the narrative and fostering a culture of acceptance can empower those labeled as mentally ill and help dismantle the barriers that keep them from feeling wholly included in society. Institutional abuses. Case study of unnamed facility or UN. The experiences encountered at institutions such as UN serve as a glaring indicator of the systemic issues plaguing mental health services. From the very beginning of the relationship with UN, individuals may find themselves facing arbitrary rules and unfair treatment that violate both ethical practices and legal rights. For instance, in many cases, residents like myself were not provided with transparent lease agreements or clear outlines of service costs. Instead, facilities often use pressure tactics, like requiring occupants to backdate lease agreements or signing documents without necessary support, leaving them vulnerable to exploitation. Moreover, while UN purports to facilitate housing stability, my experience reflects how they often implement punitive measures that directly contravene court-ordered arrangements for visitation. The denial of family visits not only disrupts the family unit, but also hinders personal growth and success following a mental health crisis. By allowing such interferences, UN perpetuates an environment of fear and helplessness. Economic manipulation is another egregious issue observed in these institutional settings. Residents are often billed for services that were never rendered or offered only at inflated costs. In my case, despite court arrangements for my children, communication and policies seem to shift based on complaints rather than rooted in supportive measures designed to help families. This behavior reflects a broader negligence found in many mental health facilities, wherein the emphasis seems to shift solely to profit, undermining the very ethos of care and rehabilitation. Institutions like UN must be held accountable to ensure that mental health services embody the dignity and respect that every individual deserves. Advocating for change within these facilities is essential in combating the culture of abuse that occurs when accountability is absent. The reality of civil rights violations. Civil rights violations against individuals with mental health diagnoses often manifest in insidious and damaging ways. Despite laws meant to protect their rights, those suffering from mental health conditions frequently find themselves vulnerable to unfair treatment, often at the hands of the very systems designed to assist them. This chapter examines the various forms of civil rights infringements faced by these individuals, demonstrating how systemic failures allow discrimination to persist unchecked. One of the most troubling aspects of civil rights violations involves unjust imprisonment. Many individuals with mental health issues are wrongfully incarcerated due to a lack of appropriate mental health care in the community. Instead of receiving treatment in a supportive environment, individuals might find themselves in jails where mental health resources are scarce or non-existent. This not only exacerbates their existing conditions, but also creates an environment rife with hostility and neglect. Furthermore, the legal system may impose severe sentences for behaviors associated with untreated mental health conditions, perpetuating a cycle of criminalization rather than rehabilitation. Moreover, the failure of law enforcement to adequately respond to mental health. That was the first 2,500 words of the article. Please upgrade your plan to listen to up to 500,000 words. Simply go to audioread.com/ad and you'll see the upgrade option. Your support helps us keep making the service better. Thank you.